make a comment or ask a question, it could be out in the universe. So just so you're aware. So all good. All right, so we are here for the upsides to downsizing. My name is Jackie White, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff today as it relates to real estate. And if you are an empty nester or retiree and looking to downsize your house, we're going to cover a lot of topics today. So including the current state of the real estate market, types of housing to consider, where would that next house be and what could that look like? The benefits of downsizing, some great pros as it relates to downsizing your home. And then of course, some locations for you to consider. Many of you guys are probably here in Colorado, but if you're thinking about moving out of state or out of the country, we're going to cover what those options are for you. And lastly, how to get your home ready to sell, right? For some folks, they've been in their home for many years, and I know it's very easy to accumulate and kind of get settled in your home and have it feel like yours, but how do you get it ready to sell and market so others are excited to buy your house, pay top dollar, and make it a smooth transaction so you can move on to your next chapter? Okay, so I am Jackie White, and I am a local realtor here in Colorado in the Denver metro area. So I have been a realtor for 10 years, coming up this April. So I've been doing this for a decade. I have closed close to 300 homes. I do a lot of work in the foothills, which is the area that I live, and help people down throughout the Denver metro area as well. So a little bit about me. Here's some fun photos, just me and my family. I am a mom of 2 kids, and I am a youth sports fan extraordinaire. So you'll hear me at the sidelines at a ski moguls competition or basketball game or baseball game. I'm just always out there supporting my kids. And I do love to ski. I do say, though, that I'm more of an expert après skier than being on the slopes. Before I got into real estate, I was a marketing executive. So I worked with a number of Fortune 500 companies doing their marketing, including Samsung and DirecTV. Really enjoyed that work, got into real estate, and I'm loving that even more, quite honestly. So it doesn't feel like work. I enjoy helping folks get into their new homes. I started investing in real estate in 2012. And then shortly thereafter, I did get my license in 2014. So I am a certified mountain area specialist. So I do a lot of work in Conifer and Evergreen, Pine, Bailey, the foothills area. But I do work throughout Denver because I get referrals in the Denver metro area and the suburbs. And quite honestly, a lot of my clients that start in the foothills relocate down the hill and vice versa. And so I am adept at doing real estate transactions throughout all the Denver metro area. Additionally, I am a seniors real estate specialist. So this is a designation that I earned after a lot of class time, but truly practical time working with seniors and helping them to find their new home. I'm also very active in wildfire prevention and education and outreach within our community. My husband's a firefighter, and I'm also a volunteer on the local board of directors for Intercanyon Fire. So very involved in giving back to our community in that way. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I need to update this because we are close to 300 transactions, but in the last decade, I have helped quite a few people buy and sell homes, and it's just been very rewarding for me to be part of these transactions and a big purchase or sale on the part of someone's life and their home, and in finding them a place that's going to be well suited for their needs, for their family. So very happy to be part of that over the years. So today we are going to talk a little bit and kind of set the stage about the real estate market conditions, because I'm sure you guys have all read or heard some stuff in the news about the real estate market. Is it up? Is it down? Are we in recession? Are we not? And that can vary depending on the news cycle of the day. So let's talk about what's actually happening. I'm very fortunate to be associated with Your Castle Real Estate. We are the largest independently owned brokerage here in Colorado. We've got over 700 really great realtors, and we do a lot of data analysis. And so I find this to be really helpful as far as my clients and guiding them in making decisions on timing and what to do, whether they're buying or selling a house. So don't forget, you've probably heard the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads. That's kind of how the news cycle works. So whatever's the most traumatic for the day, they sensationalize and get it out there. So let's just kind of bring it back down to reality. So, the market was slowing down last year compared to what we saw in the fever of the post-COVID real estate era, right? So after we started opening up and coming out of quarantine in summer of 2020, the market just went gangbusters, quite frankly. Interest rates were super low. I mean, I had a lot of clients buying houses with interest rates at 2.5% and 3%, which is, very low historically. And it allowed buyers to expand their budget because they could afford more when lending was cheap. And now that the interest rates have become more stabilized and more of the 40-year average, the market is not quite as busy as it was, I would say, from, summer of 2020 through spring of 22. And it really kind of felt like musical chairs. I mean, everybody is moving, they're getting in new houses, new locations, and now we've all kind of found a seat. So we're kind of staying put. And those folks that really need to move are the ones that are considering it. But what I have found is that the interest rates did reach a peak of 8% in October. And so that really did slow things down. And that had to do with the Fed trying to slow down inflation and help our economy. And in December, the Fed announced that they would be reducing interest rates, and they found that their tactics had been working. They had reached an inflation rate close to 2%, which was their goal. And even just that news of the Fed anticipating lowering rates 3 times in 2024 led to a lot of activity. So applications for loans are up, and we're seeing a lot more. I mean, I'm personally having a lot more conversations with people that are thinking about moving. And so consumer confidence has increased, and I anticipate this spring is going to be kind of more of our normal environment. So the market always will shift, and it's just a matter of what opportunities it presents and for whom, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Something I want to just kind of bring to your attention is historically what we have seen in terms of the real estate market since 2007. So this chart really kind of demonstrates the inventory of homes and how that impacts demand and pricing. So if we go back to 2007, we were right in the middle of the recession at that time. We look at the number of active homes for sale. So that is the dark purple line. These are the homes that were on the market that folks could purchase. And the dotted line represented the number of sales that actually occurred. So you can see there's a wave here, and that kind of represents some seasonality, right? There's times of year where there's a more active market versus, typically during the holidays, it slows down a little bit. But the thing to note is that the gap between these two lines represents the homes that were available to purchase, or the inventory. And so the larger the gap, the more homes were available, which means we were in a buyer's market because buyers kind of had the upper hand. Sellers, so we had a lot more homes on the market. So less buyers, meaning the buyers had the upper hand because they could negotiate and be a little tougher with sellers because sellers were eager to sell their home and had too much competition at the time. Starting in 2009, 10, and 11, we became a little bit more balanced. So the playing field was a little more equal between buyers and sellers based on the demand and the number of homes that were on the market. Starting the later half of 2011, we became in an environment for several years, we were more of an efficient seller's market. So if your house was in great shape and people were out there buying, you're going to get some attention and you're going to get close to the asking price on your house. Now, as I mentioned, once we came out of quarantine in 2020 and we could start showing houses again, we got into a dysfunctionally tight market through the summer of 2022. And that was the environment which you've probably heard from neighbors or friends or family where people were getting multiple offers on houses overnight. They were asking or offering well above the asking price, waiving a lot of their rights like appraisal, inspection, offering all sorts of silly things like Bronco seasons tickets just to get the house because it was so competitive. There were not a lot of houses available, as you can see by the purple line, and the dotted line showed that there was a lot of demand. Now, when the interest rates have kind of stabilized and now we're in the 6s and anticipating being in the 5s later this year, we have gone back to that efficient seller's market akin to what we saw prior to COVID, which truthfully, I think is a little bit better environment for all parties involved, a little less stress. People can make decisions without having to make it in a heartbeat. And we've got a little bit more of an even playing field. Another thing I want to make note of is we also look at how much inventory is available. So again, looking at 2021, when the interest rates started to go up, we had less inventory. 2022 increased a little bit. 23 was more than that. And so as we get more inventory of homes available, it becomes a little bit more of an even playing field. So if you are selling your house and also buying, I know there were a lot of folks that weren't interested in downsizing during kind of the height of the fevered real estate market because they just didn't want the pressure. They didn't want to have to make an offer and make a decision very quickly. And they said, you know what, we'll just stay where we are. Now it's a little bit more of an even playing field. And so I feel like for a lot of folks that have considered downsizing and going to a new home, they feel a little bit more at ease in making these big decisions because it doesn't have to happen in a heartbeat. Sometimes you can sleep on it and just kind of consider the home before you make that offer. Okay, so some key points is that, home prices have gone up on average 6% a year over the last 45 years. So that's about what we typically see in the Denver metro area. And they have gone up in value in the last 44 years, all except for 4 years. And that was during the recession of, 08, 09, 10 timeframe. Okay. And so we typically do see that appreciation on average of 6% a year. But just because we have a record year of home sales and appreciation doesn't mean it's going to fall the next year. It could stabilize a little bit. And that's kind of the environment we're at today. So the first couple of years after COVID, things really ramped up in terms of pricing. And now they've kind of stabilized and normalized. Okay. And the inventory is very low because we just don't have a lot of houses. We have not kept pace with all the building that we need to do to support the population growth that we have had in the US. And specifically in Denver, it's a very popular city where a lot of people have moved, and we have not been building to keep pace with that demand. And a couple more charts here, and then we'll dig into a little bit more as we talk about downsizing. But another thing I wanted to point out is we are, again, in a seller's market, but out of that very tight seller's market, when you look at another data point, which is what we call months of inventory. So if you took the same number of houses on the market, same number of buyers, did not change any of the inventory issues, how long would it take to deplete the market of homes? And anywhere from 4 months and above is considered more of a buyer's market, and less than 6 months a seller's market. And we have been a seller's market for quite some time, but we're kind of coming out of that extreme time frame and scenario into a more balanced area. And then lastly, I wanted to share kind of time frame too, because if you're thinking about making a move, right now is a really great time to consider selling. And I know it's January, what are we talking about? The 25th here of 2024. And a lot of people think, hey, summertime is the best time to sell your house because maybe a family is going to buy it during the summer break and move in before the school year starts. However, we have found here in Colorado that the most demand occurs in the springtime, or like early spring, late winter. So March and April really is the peak as far as when buyers are looking at houses. So this chart shows us the number of buyers that go in a home between when it goes on the market and when an offer is accepted. And you can see in April 2020, of course, we were all stuck at home watching Netflix and eating potato chips and working from home. So nobody was really looking at homes at this time frame. But historically speaking, March and April is kind of the peak, and then it levels off for the summer. So if you think you might want to sell your house this year, let's make sure that we talk about this. I'll give you some guidance, help you with, little projects to complete and where you can spend your money wisely and what isn't worth investing in to make sure that your house is ready at the peak. Because I have found even if you wait till June or July, people are on vacation, they're doing other things, or if they were motivated, they already bought a house. So you really want to kind of look at this time frame if you have a flexible schedule. And I'm going to go ahead and skip over this chart here. So let's go into why downsize, right? So it's a big decision for a lot of people. And I have worked with baby boomers and, empty nesters and retirees for many, many years. And I can understand also working with my own family that it's a big decision. You raise your children in this home, you have a family, you've been there with your partner, whatever the scenario is, and it's your home. It feels comfortable, right? But over time, there's things about it that you could probably change that would make your lifestyle a little easier, right? Think about the home maintenance on the house, painting, taking care of the yard, especially if you live in the foothills and you've got a big yard to maintain and doing wildfire mitigation. Your utility bills. I mean, we just came out of deep freeze about a week ago. I'm afraid to see what my heat bill is going to look like, but a larger home, you've got more to maintain and heat. Now, of course, living in Colorado, there's a lot of elevation considerations as well. So there's a lot of folks out there with COPD, sleep apnea, perhaps other breathing or heart issues that truthfully, even just moving from the foothills of about, 7,500 feet down to Denver can make an impact. And I've had this across all ages of clients. I've had folks where maybe they had severe migraines and then moving back down to sea level really did improve things for them. So there is a beautiful landscape that we live here in the mountains, but it does have some challenges having that thinner air and the higher elevation. Of course, we talk a lot, myself and my clients, about stairs, and having a primary bedroom on the main level can really make your life a little bit easier. Even just this morning, I woke up and I was like, oh, my knee is bothering me. And I don't know if a storm's coming or what, but it certainly was bugging me a little this morning. And, having less steps, not having to bring a laundry basket up and down flights of stairs, it just makes your life a little bit easier. Of course, thinking about proximity to medical facilities, if you've got doctor appointments or other things you're maintaining over time, sometimes it can be a drag to drive a little bit farther. And so being closer to those facilities are helpful. And then, being close to family. I mean, that's what a lot of my folks talk about is when their grown kids have children of their own. That's a big pull. They want to be near those kids and be able to be close to them and be part of their life. So having that multi-generational living can be very appealing to some folks too. So why is it a great time if you're thinking about moving to consider doing it this year? Well, our Colorado market is still quite strong compared to other areas of the country. So even though we're not in that fevered time frame of early COVID, Colorado is a great place to live. And I'm sure, much like many of you have moved to Colorado because of the beautiful weather, the sun, the access to outdoor activities, the strong economy, the jobs, a lot of people are still looking at Colorado as a place to live. So the market is becoming more balanced. And like I mentioned earlier, it's less of a fire drill. It's not this stressed, I got to make a decision and get my offer in before 10 other people, right? Like you can kind of talk through the pros and cons of the house as you're making that decision. Now, what's really unique, so listen up if you live in the foothills, is that I think you're in a unique position, and I'm trying to make sure that the word gets out about this because we're in an environment in the foothills, and I'm talking about like Golden, Genesee, Conifer, Evergreen, Morrison Pine, Bailey, Indian Hills, Kittredge, those areas where we have houses that are really in demand. So for folks that are moving from out of state, they think about the setting we're in. We're in the trees, we've got beautiful views, a little bit of elbow room, access to hiking and biking trails. So this is where people want to be. And if you sell your house in the foothills and then move down the hill to something like a patio home, maybe condos, townhomes, something that's a lock and leave environment where you don't have to maintain things outside, you are going to have a little bit more balanced market conditions where you can have a little bit more of that upper hand when you make an offer. But you're still going to see a lot of interest in your house here in the foothills because this is where people are interested in being. So that's where you can maximize the price of your foothills home and then get a decent price down the hill. So something that's fair and a house that's going to meet your needs. So something to consider. So what type of house to look for, right? What's going to fit your needs? So I think you really have to consider what are the things that you're interested in? What are you looking for in this next chapter? And for some people, if they're in retirement and work is not, keeping them back at home all the time, being able to travel is really a nice benefit. And for some folks that are looking to travel a lot, whether it's to visit family or just go and sightsee, having a house where there's less maintenance and things to worry about while they're gone is a really nice benefit. And sometimes that can come in the form of a condo or a townhome where there is a homeowners association or something that is maintaining the exterior of your house. You don't have to worry about mowing the lawn, making sure the outside is picked up, weeding. You can just lock your door and leave. And we call that kind of a lock and leave scenario where you can just go ahead, not even think about it and worry about it because everything is kind of self-contained. And for some folks that like to travel, sometimes that means splitting time, like snowbirding, if you've heard that term, where kind of get out of Colorado, have another home in, say, Arizona or somewhere south, Florida, get out of that cold, cold weather, and then come back at different times a year. So really minimizing that maintenance does allow for more travel for folks. Another thing to think about is, do you like to eat and entertain and cook? So if that's something that you really like to do, having maybe a kitchen that's a little bit more open, you know how people always hang out in the kitchen when you're entertaining, right? So a place that is going to allow you to have friends and family over. Because sometimes, these homes, we have to look at, how big is the kitchen? Is it a galley kitchen? Or are you going to have a little bit more space and a pantry and an area to really cook? And there's a lot of those options that are available. Also think about what your hobbies are. What do you like to do, right? So if you are retired, you get a lot of extra time to now do the things you like to do, right? So are you into woodworking? Do you like to paint? Do you have yoga? So if you have a hobby that needs a dedicated space in your house, what does that look like, right? If you're going to do yoga, it might be a nice quiet spot in the home for you to really meditate and focus. If you're into woodworking, maybe you need bigger garage or a place where you can have all those tools and be able to get into your hobbies. And keep in mind too, if part of this is traveling with like a camper or you have a boat, having the ability to park something on site can be a great benefit. But also think about too, do you buy in a property or home in a neighborhood where you may not be able to park that stuff on site, but nearby there's a facility that for a small fee, you can keep that secure and stored, and then just grab it when you have use for it. So you're not paying for the land to park it at your house, and you can just pay a nominal fee and go grab that every month. Now, if you're still working, you got to think about, like, are you going to ease into retirement? I know a lot of folks will say, well, I'm not quite ready to completely, quit working, but I still want to work part-time, and maybe work from home a little bit or go into the office and still kind of have a little bit of a routine. And so we have to think about, do you need to be close to a city center or a place where there's a lot of, office parks and make that drive a little bit easier? Or if you're going to work from home, are you going to have like a dedicated home office? Or are you going to have another place that's quiet in the home with good lighting, high-speed internet to make that work? If you look behind me in my office, this thing that looks like a cabinet is actually our fourth bedroom, and it is a Murphy bed. So we've got multi-use in this room. So if I have guests, I can pop that down. They can spend the night. The rest of the time, it's up, and this is my home office. So we have to think about just how to be flexible if that's part of your plan moving forward. Now, for a lot of folks, looking at family and being close to them is really important. And we have to think about accommodating guests, whether they're coming for overnight or just for the day. And are you going to help perhaps with grandchildren with daycare? Is that part of your retirement plan too, and how you're going to spend your time with family? So do you need a little yard, or maybe there's a playground in the neighborhood that you could walk the kids to, or an area, a park nearby where you can kick a soccer ball and they can get their energy out, right? Or do you need an extra bedroom? Because maybe part of your childcare help that you're going to offer is that they can spend the night on occasion, right? I know I always enjoy doing that with my grandparents, and my kids love getting that extra bowl of ice cream when they're over at their grandparents. So those kind of things we have to think about as to how you anticipate your family time will evolve. And some folks look at multi-generational living. So that's where we've got multiple generations living under the same roof. And are we going to have some sort of guest suite with a kitchenette or a separate living area on the property? Maybe there is a guest house or what we call an accessory dwelling unit that would be available for you to use, or maybe vice versa. Maybe you have the main house and your kids that are getting started, they have the guest house. There's a lot of different flexibility in that, but it allows for sharing in expenses, sharing in household chores, helping each other out in a variety of factors. So that's something to talk about too. These are all the things that are really important to dig into before you start looking at houses, so we can make sure you're in the right house at the right time. When it comes to multiple or multi-generational living, there's a lot of different types of things you can look at. So I've had some clients actually purchase a duplex. So that's where you've got two houses adjoining each other. And mom and dad lived in one side, their grown kids and the grandkids lived in the other. And it was great because they could share with responsibilities with the kids and kind of doing a little bit of daycare for the grandkids. And then, the younger generations were able to go over and help mom and dad with some of the chores and raking leaves and getting stuff done around the house or getting on a ladder as needed. So there's a lot of mutually beneficial things to gain from that. But, if you go down that road, there's a lot to talk about, right? You may not have been under the same roof for many, many years. So kind of have to think about like privacy concerns, are we going to have quiet hours? How are you going to divide up household chores? Whether it comes from the time or the cost of maintaining things. Somebody going to cook all the time? You're going to do your own meals. And really, what is everybody hoping to gain out of this scenario, right? We want to make sure that you lay it all on the table early on so there's no hurt feelings. And then just decide if it doesn't work out, then, may or may not, that you kind of have your exit plan too. You want to check in regularly, make sure everyone's happy. But if you need to come up with a new plan to perhaps not have that multi-generational living, what does that look like? So it's much easier to discuss that early on and come up with some scenarios rather than when you're in the thick of it. So open communication, checking in regularly, these are all great things to consider as you look at multi-generational living. So another thing to think about is, what is your social life like? I mean, what are you looking for in this new home? So do you really like to be around other people? There's age restricted communities that we call them active adult communities or 55 plus, where you can be around a lot of your peers and you're all in a similar stage of life, similar activities that you're interested in. And these communities will offer a lot of social events too, whether that's, pickleball, golfing, different activities outdoors. There's usually an event center where people can meet up and just be around each other and build those new friendships, because a lot of people are in the same chapter, in the same boat, right? So kind of starting over in a new neighborhood. And so they're all interested in kind of getting together and getting to know each other. There are actually quite a bit of 55 plus or adult communities, active adult communities here in the Denver area. I'm going to share a couple with you just so you can kind of get a sense of what this looks like. So up in Broomfield, we have Anthem Ranch, and the price points can vary based on the size of the home and the location, but starting in the 600s, and then of course the premiums are over $1 million. But these homes were built in 2005 to 2011, so fairly new in construction. They have this beautiful rec center, 32,000 square feet, and there's bourbon tasting, summer concert series, pickleball, a lot of different activities that they have going on. Of course, it's all up to your discretion. If you want to participate, they're optional, not required, but it's nice to know that some of these activities are there if you choose. And there's a variety of home layouts. This one looks a little bit bigger than this one right here, but they really try to take advantage of having main floor living and a really easy floor plan for everyone to use. Another one that we've got here is Green Gables, and that is in Lakewood. So that's going to be off of Wadsworth and just north of 285. So if you're familiar with that area, it used to be an old golf course, and they built out this community around 2017. I helped a client purchase in here, and she loves it. So they have it broken out in a variety of different sections, and there's one that is patio homes and a little bit more of that empty nester demographic, and then they have some townhomes, they have single family homes. So it's a little bit more of a mixture of generations within the neighborhood, but they're all a little bit separate, but all part of this cohesive Green Gables area. They've got a beautiful pond. You can go fishing here. They've got a great clubhouse and pool. I know she loves taking her grandkids over here in the summertime. So they have a lot of what we call paired homes or patio homes. And what I really like about it is the design feels like a single family house. It doesn't feel like you're, attached to someone else, just the way they've arranged everything and where the windows are. So you still have a fair amount of privacy, but an affordable area to be. So, and really easy access to Belmar shopping and dining. That's, just a few minutes north of there. Okay, and then I also want to share another community here. This is Heritage Eagle Bend. This is a big community out in Aurora, and you can get in the mid 500s to the low 900s here. So these homes were built in the early 2000s, and they do have a golf course here. Now, the thing I want to point out about golf courses is you don't have to play golf to live near a golf course. I've had several clients like to back up to a golf course, especially if they're coming from the foothills, because it feels like they have a big backyard and open space behind them because of that separation between the greens or the houses across the way. So again, you don't have to be a golfer, but you might like to be in that community, and because it's social and it's got, the outdoor pools and bocce ball and pickleball and all sorts of stuff going on, and then just have a little bit more breathing room between houses because of the golf course. So something just to think about. So we've talked a little bit about Colorado and staying in state, but I do find a lot of my clients will consider moving out of state too, and there's a lot of benefits for doing that. So if you're considering a move out of state, something you might want to think about is putting some stuff in storage after you sell your house and going out to that place you're considering moving to and just test the waters. I've had a lot of clients do this. So they'll rent an Airbnb and explore the community, see what neighborhoods they like. And I have set them up with a local expert in that city so they can understand where are the places that they might want to consider before they commit. And it's been a great experience for many of them. And truthfully, I did that when I moved to Colorado in 2007. So we rented for about 8 months while working with our realtor before we bought. And turns out we ended up in a great location, but had I just picked the first one that I thought of, it may not have been the right fit for us. But getting a referral that's an expert in that area will help you kind of narrow down the search and where you want to be. Also, we talked about this earlier. If you move out of state, for some folks, having lower elevation really helps. I mean, truthfully, I know I sleep a lot better at lower elevation. It can really impact your health in ways you may not be aware of till you spend more time where we have an abundance of oxygen. So think about that. Now, some states to consider too with taxes is, Delaware right now has no sales tax and really low property taxes and no death taxes. Colorado is number 7 in the rankings. We have the property taxes are the 3rd lowest in the US. Now, I know we just had assessments in June, so it may not feel that way. But really, I've lived all over the world with my father being in the military, and we do have some fairly low taxes, comparatively speaking. And no state, estate, or inheritance taxes, but we do have some local taxes that are above the national average. So it kind of balances its way out, but if you stay in Colorado, you're still in good shape. Something else to think about too is there are locations abroad to consider. So let's talk about the US and Canada and where to consider, and then abroad as well. So Florida really does cater to the 55 plus and empty nester community. There is a lot of places that are really built for this next chapter and making it really fun and comfortable for what your needs are. Of course, now you're at sea level too, so you get a little more of that oxygen. So you may have heard of the Villages. That is a huge community in Central Florida that really caters towards this audience and makes the living very easy. Lots of activities. I know some folks that have moved there. And of course, the weather is nice. So a little bit warmer than Colorado. Tennessee is another one that's really kind of up and coming. Nashville, of course, is a great city for music and nightlife. But it also has a great, vibrant, just kind of city that's growing. It honestly feels like Denver from maybe 15 years ago, just like a really strong city, kind of on the cusp of some growth, but still has access to some rural landscape where you can get a little bit more elbow room on your property. Pennsylvania is another one too. They have really reasonable house prices. I actually lived in Pittsburgh for a couple of years. This is the downtown area. We call this the 3 rivers, where the rivers come together, and the Steelers Stadium is right here. But they've got a lot of higher education, great healthcare. And like I said, the housing prices are very affordable out that way. So it might be a place where you can consider. And I do find that a lot of my folks that sell here in Colorado and then move out of state, they're really able to capture a ton of equity here in Colorado, move to another location, and because the housing is so much more affordable, have a really nice nest egg to enjoy retirement with because the housing is so much cheaper. So you can use that for travel, a little bit more buffer and savings. And I have found that to be quite, consistent across the board for folks that are moving out of state. Virginia is another one. Charlottesville, Roanoke, and Virginia Beach are seeing a lot of growth, especially after COVID. And I've got some folks I know that live in that area in Richmond and really like it. It's a beautiful area, Home ownership is a little bit cheaper as well, a little bit more moderate temperatures. So it may not be as warm as Florida, but year round it's a little bit more moderate. So another area to consider. Now, of course, you can look abroad too if you're feeling adventurous. So there's a lot of options there too, especially if you're retired and you're thinking about doing some travel. So if you look at British Columbia in Canada, it's really active, kind of like Colorado. I mean, there's skiing, there's hiking, mountain biking, water activities. There's just a lot that you can do in British Columbia in Canada. And you're close to the US. You could get down to, Seattle or Washington State if you choose, but just another part of the world to consider. Mexico actually has a really growing, what we call an expat community. So that would be Americans moving down there. And I know Cabo itself, it kind of feels like Mexico and Arizona had a baby. Like it just feels as though it's a lot of Americans there, truthfully. So of course, you've got great food, good weather, lots of access to water activities too. Panama is really growing. I actually have a friend that was looking very closely at Panama, and they have a very mild tropical climate, a lot of coastal towns, and just a updated infrastructure. So when you think about healthcare and the other things that are necessary, it's another good option. And then my other great choice that I love, I would consider, is Costa Rica. And that's a great place if you haven't visited. It's very easy to get to. It's a short flight. We're only, I think, about 1 hour off in time zone, but felt very safe when I was there and I visited. Lots of outdoor activities. There's the mountains, there's the beach, there's a little bit of everything. Food was great. Cost of living is really low. And there's a lot of Americans, over 700,000, the last research that I looked into it. So another place to consider. Maybe schedule a vacation there first. Check it out. And then lastly, you wanted to share Portugal is another great one. I actually have a good friend that is going to be retiring to Portugal later this year. And so what's nice about it is you have a moderate climate and a really easy access to travel throughout Europe. There's a lot of Americans moving to Portugal, and they actually, if you look for a show on Apple TV, it's called The Reluctant Traveler, and it's the guy from the show Schitt's Creek. Can't think of his name. Levy. Not Marv Levy. Can't think of his name. Totally drawing a blank. But the guy from that show, it's kind of a play on like travel and whatnot. But he does a whole episode on Portugal, and it was great. I mean, you look at the food and the culture. It's just a really beautiful area, somewhere I would like to check out now as well. So. And lastly, Greece. So here we've got great weather, beautiful beaches, but they have a really low flat tax. So that can be very appealing if you're buying property there as well. And getting a visa is very easy too. So, all right. So what do you do next, right? I think anytime you're considering something new, you kind of have to map out a plan, have a checklist, like what are we going to do next, right? And as you formulate that plan, there's a lot to think about. So having a guide and working through that process, such as a realtor that is experienced in working with this, kind of stage in your life, and that next chapter is really helpful. So first thing is really learning about the local market conditions and determine what does that mean for your sale and your purchase, right? So what is your home worth today? You take that equity, you go buy a new home. Do you need a little mortgage? Are you going to pay cash? What can you get for your budget? Let's just kind of lay out the landscape as far as what's available, what your options are. Because sometimes when you start thinking about this, it's like, I don't even know where to begin, right? And without options, it's hard to make a decision. You just kind of feel like you're operating in this void, right? So start to map out that plan and figure out what that looks like. And a lot of it starts with the money. So what is your house worth? What are you going to walk away from the sale of the house? And then what can you afford with that money? So getting what we call a comparative market analysis, which is a report on your home's value, is the first place to start. So that way you know what time of year you're going to market your house for sale, what other homes in your neighborhood have been selling for, what the potential price point and sale of yours is, and then what do you walk away with. So those are really important things to look at, and it just reduces that uncertainty. So it's good to be informed with good information to make a decision. Timing is important too, right? So as I walk through homes with my clients, we talk about like, what do we have to do to prep the house? And, sometimes people are in great shape. And I just say, hey, listen, if you want, I could take pictures next week. You're ready to go. Sometimes it's a little bit of decluttering and depersonalizing and clearing out some closets. And sometimes, there's little projects too we have to talk about. And honestly, sometimes I have clients tell me, you know what, we've thought about doing that kitchen remodel and the bathroom remodel. Should we do it? And we just kind of lay out the pros and cons of doing that work versus just listing the home at the appropriate price point in the current condition with the current finishes that are in the home. Because if you hire a contractor, you might miss that like prime window of getting your house on the market when there's the most demand. And, anytime you hire a contractor, you might have kind of a longer timeline than you expected. And you just don't want to miss that prime window for selling your house. So there might be some benefit to not doing the renovations or upgrades or things you were considering and just pricing the home correctly, and you'll get the maximum amount at the best time of year. Things you have to think about too is, do you have other things happening in your family? Maybe you've got a wedding coming up, birth of a grandchild or another family member, maybe some medical things you're attending to. And so we kind of have to work around that, make sure that if you've got those things going on, what can we do to best manage the sale of the house? What can I do to help in that process? So you're not feeling stressed, or maybe we have to just kind of shift the timing of selling the house based on what you've got going on in your life, because we all have lives and things going on, right? And then, a lot of times I have people ask me honestly, like, what do I do if my house sells quickly, right? Like, okay, it's a great real estate market. And what if I get a buyer right away? Then what? Nobody wants to be homeless, right? So I wanted to just kind of walk through what the process looks like, because it really, I'll tell you, I've sold over 300 homes. I've never, knock on wood, had a homeowner go homeless. So, so when you sell a house, let's say you get it all ready to go, you've painted, you've cleaned up, you've got, everything spruced up, put it on the market. And then when you accept an offer, it usually takes about 30 days from when that offer is accepted. And then we do what we call closing on the transaction. That means all the contracts are signed at the very, very end. Money is dispersed, you get your funds, they get the keys, and then we move on with life, right? So that takes about 30 days. We also have what's called a post-closing occupancy period, or a seller rent back. So that means that in the contract, you can negotiate, and I do this all the time, that you can stay in your house for a time period after the closing. So let's walk through a scenario. Let's say you list your home for sale on March 1st. And that first day, somebody falls in love with it, gives you a great offer. You use the month of March to get through all of the contract timelines and appraisals, inspections, etc. And the closing date is April 1st. Well, if you negotiate on March 1st, you can get up to 60 days after closing, if there's a loan on the house that the buyer's using, which, most cases there are, that you can stay in the house afterwards. And I've been pretty successful getting this at no cost or very, very little. So March, we're doing the contract period, and then April and May, you're staying in the house. So now you got 90 days between when your home goes under contract and when you move out that you can be finding that replacement house. The nice thing about getting the closing done after 30 days is now all those hoops that have to be jumped through are done, right? The buyer is locked in, you've got your money, everything's closed. And now, especially in those 60 days here, you can be making some offers and be very confident that it's not contingent on the sale of your existing home selling. And then that makes your offer more appealing to the buyer of your new home, because they don't have to be linked to your current home selling. Now, there's contingent sales all the time, but for a smoother transaction, it's kind of nice to be in that scenario. Now, if the buyer is purchasing with cash, there are no restrictions for the time period of renting the home after the closing, but a lot of people, they're buying the house, they do want to move in at some point, so it may not be forever, right? But that's a timeline that will allow you to have some flexibility. And here's the deal. Let's say you have an agreement to rent it for 2 months after the closing. Doesn't mean you have to use all of it. I've had a lot of clients after, a couple of weeks, they find the new house and they move out and just hand over the keys. They don't need the full 60 days, but I do find there's a lot of peace of mind in getting that secured ahead of time. That way there's that flexibility. If you don't need it, fine. Hand over the keys to the new homeowner and move on your way. But at least you know that you've got that buffer if you need it. Now, when you're getting your home ready to sell, there's a lot to think about to make sure that you get the best return on your investment. And typically that starts with carpet and paint, right? Just freshen it up. Imagine yourself selling a car. Like there's probably things in your vehicle that, you use on a daily basis, but if you were going to sell your car, you're going to spruce it all up. Same thing with your house, right? So catch up on maintenance, get the chimney swept, service the furnace, clean the gutters. If you live in the foothills and you have a septic system, you do have to have that pumped and inspected before you close the house. So I always recommend do that early, because the last thing you want to know is that you've got a surprise, and hopefully you don't get one, but a week before closing is not the time to find out you need a new septic tank. So the septic permit's good for 6 months. So I even tell folks, if you know you're going to sell, just get it done now. Get that peace of mind that your septic system is checked out and you don't have to deal with it. But remember, again, as you look at getting your house ready, look at your appliances. Do you have something that's not working? Do you need to update a refrigerator? Decluttering is free, of course, but these are the things that I tend to give my clients advice on, just so they're not overspending on stuff they're just not going to get back in terms of an investment. Again, decluttering is the best place to start. Focus on one room at a time. It can feel overwhelming when you look at your whole house, but if you just pick one room, maybe pick an easy room first, like the guest room or something. Get that one knocked out, go to the next room, try to figure out what you're going to do with stuff. And, get rid of just the junk. We all accumulate stuff. Kind of narrow down the furniture. We want the space to feel as open as possible. Depersonalizing is key. You really want a buyer to walk through your house and feel as though it's going to be their home and not be distracted by your collections or family photos. We want to kind of really depersonalize the house. Make the closets a little bit decluttered. While it can feel out of sight, out of mind, you don't want someone to open the door and then have all the stuff, like those fitted sheets you can never fold correctly falling on their faces. So you want to just get that all organized. There's a lot of folks that can help you out too. I've got a great team of, I hate to use this term, but junk haulers, where you just point at the pile and they get rid of it. You don't have to think about it. There's organizations that will come pick things up, and you can also hire a professional organizers. There's some great ones out there, and they will sit with you for a couple hours, bring things to you, and all you have to decide, are you going to keep, donate, sell, or trash the item? And then they take that thing and they move on and give you the next one. Keep, donate, sell, or trash. And it's very easy if you're doing it on your own to get caught up on like photo albums and mementos. But when you have someone that's trying to keep you focused, it's a lot easier to get through that process. And they will help you with selling things of value on eBay or consignment, so you can recover some of the costs of their services as well. So another thing that I see a lot too is probably have other family members, maybe grown kids, who still have stuff from high school in your house. Don't become that storage unit. Tell them it's time, come get your stuff, or I'm getting rid of it. So make sure that the other members of the family come get their stuff as well. So as you're going through this process, the best advice I can offer is make decisions while you're in control, right? So when it's your timeline, it's your decision, and you're just making the move to move forward, and it's all in your control. Unfortunately, I've seen some folks wait a little longer, and then health or just financial impacts require that family members get involved. And, it's just more personalities in the mix, and they're being forced into a decision as opposed to making it on their own. So really think about that. Even if you're just starting to explore this as an option in terms of downsizing, is the best advice. And the clients I have seen be the most successful are the ones who are doing it on their own and making their own choices. So it's not the family couldn't get involved and help, but you want to make sure that you're kind of in control of the process, as opposed to perhaps health or finances stepping in and making those decisions for you. So this is our, presentation. So I appreciate you listening in. I am happy to stick around too for a few minutes and answer questions. So if you have any, feel free to write that in the chat, or take yourself off mute and ask questions. But I hope this has been helpful. I've worked with many baby boomers and empty nesters and retirees sell homes over the years, and really had a very positive experience. It can feel a little overwhelming when you get started with this process, but I have kept in touch with all these clients, and they have all said, how happy they are moving in their new home. They really wish they had started it earlier. What a great benefit it is as far as having more freedom, financially, with time, and not having as many chores. And it's just been a great experience for them. So I hope as you consider moving and doing a downsizing yourself, if you want to call me, I'm more than happy to consult with you, give you some advice. No obligations, but of course, if I can be the guide for you in this new chapter of your life, I'd be happy to do that. And again, happy to hang out for a minute or two. If anybody has questions, feel free to unmute yourself or hop in the chat box and ask a question. And I'm going to keep an eye on Facebook too, in case anyone's making a note there as well. And if you think of something later on, it might pop up, feel free to jot down my phone number, or you could email me at jackiewhiterealtor@gmail.com. Always happy to answer questions, give you some more information. This is kind of just an introduction as far as looking at downsizing. So thank you all for joining. Those of you on Zoom, on Facebook, and everywhere else, we appreciate your time and look forward to talking to you when you're ready. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the sun, and we'll see you later. Bye.